this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I can't do this for the next 30 years of my life. Kacia was actually out speaking at a conference or something, got back later that night. It was a Friday night, had a bottle of wine. I was like, babe, we got to talk. I think I want to leave dentistry. This just isn't for me. Like, I was just like, I can't do this for the next 30 years. It's not what I'm meant to do. But I think I want to get into real estate investing, which at that time, I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea where to start. I just heard about it. I'm like, I think I can do it. I left and never looked back. And now we're doing this whole real estate thing.
I feel like most people don't do what you did. Most people just suck up and they live, I don't want to use the word necessarily miserable their entire lives, but they live in that comfort zone forever. And they wake up every day and they're not excited, they're not learning, they're not growing. It's just the mundane repeat just to get it over with, to be able to do whatever else. And some people still enjoy their life doing it that way. But man, it's so much more, at least I've found for myself, life is so much more interesting and entertaining when you're chasing what you want to chase. All right, so I'm here with my friends Kacia and Seena Ghetmiri. Did I say that right, or did I?
You did. You got it.
Yes, I've been practicing. These folks are awesome. I am so excited to have them on the podcast. I actually met with them, I don't know, months ago, earlier this year, because Kacia has a very large podcast called the Empower Her podcast. And so they reached out and offered to allow me to pick their brain, which was amazing. So you helped me launch mine. You're way ahead of the game, absolutely crushing it, but you helped me get mine off of the ground. And so I am super excited to be able to interview you guys today.
Yeah. Oh, we're so excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
I remember we were talking about it. I was like, you have to do this. This is going to be such a good show. So it's exciting to be here and be on the show now.
Yeah.
Yes, I am stoked. And you guys have been crushing it in the real estate space, which obviously we will dig in. But your story is very interesting because, Seena, you were like a dentist, correct? Like not very long.
Full-blown dentist.
So walk us down that path. Like, how did you, because today you're not a dentist.
Correct.
Take us through that journey, because I thought it was pretty cool to hear your story when we first
talked. Absolutely. And I'll try to keep it high level to not take too long. But essentially, I don't know if anyone can relate to this. I felt a little bit of pressure from my family to kind of do something that's more prestigious. A lot of Middle Eastern culture. I'm Persian. You feel those undertones of like, well, I should go do something that's like, prestigious in their eyes. So thought that, doctor, lawyer, engineer, something like that, found dentistry. I'm like, oh, this could be pretty good. Like good hours, good money. Seems like they have a good lifestyle. And I was like, let's do that. So spent the next, undergrad 4 years, dental school 4 years, like pretty much, and all the in-between time, about a decade of my life getting to become a dentist. And sometimes you don't know what it's like until you get there and you start working and like you start actually like the day in the life and actually doing it. Because the whole time leading up to it through school, I was like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. Once I get to, this end goal, life is gonna be so easy. It's gonna be great. Everything's gonna be, I'm just gonna ride off into the sunset, barely working, making a ton of money. So I graduate, start working. And I'm like, oh, this is nothing like I thought. Like it was tough. Going from school to like real life, practicing it was a big transition. I chalked it up to, well, I'm just getting, I'm getting my bearings. I'm getting my feet wet. Like I'm learning. So I spent a couple years working in a clinic that was more like a high volume, seeing a lot of patients, getting a lot of experience, nights, weekends, kind of the crappy hours. And I was like, I'll do 2 years of that. Then I'm going to go into like a private practice and then I'll just like be really chilling. So after about 2 years, we ended up moving from San Diego to Austin, Texas. I get an awesome job, 4 days a week. Taxes are great in Texas. So I'm making a lot of money, great environment, great assistance, everything I could ask for. And after, 6 months, the honeymoon phase wore off. I'm like, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I can't do this for the next 30 years of my life. And Kacia was actually out she was speaking at a conference or something, got back later that night. It was a Friday night, had a bottle of wine. I was like, babe, we got to talk. I think I want to leave dentistry. This just isn't for me. Like, I was just like, I can't do this for the next 30 years. It's not what I'm meant to do. But I think I want to get into real estate investing, which at that time, I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea where to start. I just heard about it. I'm like, I think I can do it. Looking back now, I wouldn't recommend that path of just jumping and figuring it out, because there's a lot of time of just analysis paralysis, trying to figure it out. Spent about a year like kind of finding my bearings, but luckily, with Kacia's business, we had we had enough to live off of. We didn't have kids or mortgage at that time, so it was a good time to take that risk. So there's a lot of stuff in there, and we can get into it on finding that path. But essentially, I left and never looked back, and now we're doing this whole real estate thing. Two years later, it's crazy what's happened.
That is awesome. I feel like most people don't do what you did. Most people just suck it up and they live, I don't want to use the word necessarily miserable their entire lives, but they live in that comfort zone forever. And they wake up every day and they're not excited, they're not learning, they're not growing. It's just the mundane repeat just to get it over with, to be able to do whatever else. And some people still enjoy their life doing it that way. But man, it's so much more, at least I've found for myself, life is so much more interesting and entertaining when you're chasing what you want to chase. I know, Kacia, you've been an entrepreneur for how long now? So I know that's been your journey as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was interesting, because I've been an entrepreneur since January of 2014. And first I built a business on the side while working full-time at Google. But then when Seena came to me that Friday night and he was like, I want to quit dentistry, immediately I was like, hell yes, get out. Because to me, I'm like, our days are numbered here and we don't know the count. And I really wanted to be married to someone who was excited about his life and what he was doing. But I also knew that we wanted to move into this season of wanting to have kids. And for us, being tied to a brick and mortar, we had a lot of dreams about like taking our kids to school together and getting to travel as a family and creating the life that we didn't have growing up. And I didn't really see how we could do that with him, not only not loving what he was doing, but in addition to that, us being tied to these structured corporate hours of him physically needing to be there in order for him to make money. And I just believe that Seena's smart enough to figure anything out. So I was like, sure, like, let's just do this. And that was kind of when the seed was planted for me, because at the time, I have a podcast, like you mentioned, I do live events and retreats and I keynote speak. And I have a lot of programs where I'm grateful to have cash flow coming into my business, but I have to show up in order to make that income. And we had no streams of like passive income at that point. So in the back of my head, I was already starting to think like, I don't really know exactly what this real estate investing space is, but if we could funnel the income that was active coming from my business into Seena figuring out how to take that and put it into something else, I'm just like, team Seena, I knew he could figure out the logistics of it, and I'll just go over here and do my thing and just kind of push it in to give us more optionality in the future, especially knowing that we wanted to start a family. So it made a lot of sense to me, even though I didn't understand any logistics of it. I was like, let's do it. Quit your job.
We had no idea what we were doing. Yeah, we had absolutely no idea.
That's what you call a power couple, though. You're just working together to absolutely build the empire. And it's been amazing. Also, spoiler alert, they talk about building a family. You guys are supposed to have a baby in what, 5? Probably by the time this podcast.
We hopefully make it through this podcast. I don't know.
Gotta go.
That would be a different kind of podcast.
That would be the most epic exit of a podcast of all.
Great content for sure.
Oh man. So yeah, I'm super excited. You guys are having a boy in just a few weeks.
Yeah, we're super excited.
We're so excited. And it's really cool too, because, we think often about like the example that we set for our kids, and like we want to show like an exceptional marriage to our kids and we want to be really present with them. But also it was really important for both of us to be like, we're passionate about our lives. And Seena really did not like what he was doing as a dentist. Yeah. And I've been in this entrepreneurial space for a decade. So I'm just constantly pivoting all the time, finding things that light me up. So I got to have that experience, but like, you want that for your favorite person too, where I'm like, you don't get to see, like, you don't get to tap into your potential. And I was like, let's just figure out what that is. And here we are.
Yeah. I mean, part of the biggest reason is that day, that Friday, is like, I was just sitting there at the end of the day. It was like a busy day. And I was like, I come home from work and I'm not excited, not energized. Like, how is this going to play out with a kid and a family? Like, I'm not going to get to be the type of dad I want to be, the type of person I want to be, the husband I want to be. If I come home from work and I'm just exhausted and like I don't have any energy and it's not lighting me up, like what kind of example is that setting? It's not inspiring my wife. It's not going to inspire my kids in the future. And I think one of the hardest parts, if anyone's listening, that maybe they did go into like a graduate degree and they spent time becoming, going to school and getting all these degrees and something that took a long time to get to. One of the hardest parts, at least for me, was just admitting like maybe this isn't right. And
Yeah.
that's like the first step of not like I felt guilty. I was like, I should like this because I make good money. Like someone else would kill for this, like,
Yeah.
and that goes through your head like, well, I should be happy enough. If this is good enough, like I should be happy for what I have. And you just got to realize like, well, if it's not your journey and that's not your path, it's okay to not be happy with where you're at, even though someone else would be. And if you're not happy, you're the one that's living with yourself every day.
Preach.
I love that.
Going through that.
I love it. So many people struggle with that, man.
Yeah.
They it's like it's exactly what you said. It's guilt because you have it way better than most, but it's
Hmm.
still not fulfilling. So it's like
Yep.
Mhm.
you're probably at the point, obviously, where you're like, dude, it's not about the money anymore. At some point,
Yeah.
you
Right.
come to that realization. It's like, okay, what do I want this life to be about? And I think it's pretty cool that you stepped out and did it. And then also just hearing your guys' story, how important it is to have a supportive spouse, like a
Hmm.
supportive partner. Like
Yeah.
he walks in, I was like, heck yeah, let's freaking go. Like, what are you doing? Why didn't you do this years ago? Not really, but like she's on your side and you're on her side, supporting her. And
Yeah.
money in marriage, or business in marriage or whatever, finances in marriage is a big topic for me because I feel as though it's oftentimes it's a point of contention. I
Yes.
don't
Hmm.
know if one spouse lives in so much fear that they want to tamper down the other or vice versa, but you see so many marital issues arise in the form of money topics, job topics. And
Mhm.
so I think it's a lesson for everybody. Like just support your significant other. Like Kacia said it, we only have a limited number of days on this earth. We have no idea when that's going to end for any of
Mhm.
us. Like go chase your dream. Go
Yeah.
go after whatever it is you want to go after. And if you fail, the stability will be there. That's what the biggest thing is for me. It's like if you fail trying, the job is still going to be there. You can go be a dentist later. I can
Yep.
go
Yep.
sell for a company later. Like they're not going anywhere and they always need employees. So go give it a shot. You're going
Yeah.
to be
Yeah.
okay if it doesn't work out.
Yeah, I told myself this lie when I was like, I'll give myself 6 months and I'll go back. It's just like a safety net. But as soon as I left, I was like, oh, there's no way. I'll make whatever work because there's not a chance I'm going back.
You're
Yeah.
like, I'll show my feet on OnlyFans before you.
Yeah, I got pedicures every day and start taking pictures, whatever I got to do.
Well, I think that's really important too because like a lot of people listening in, what we would recommend more than what Seena did is to do it on the side, right? Which I know
Yeah,
you're all about too, of like talking about having this as another stream of income while you also have the stability of a W-2. Because the
Yeah.
challenge part of it is like Seena, like you have the confidence internally, and for anyone listening, you might feel this way too, where Seena's like, I know that I can figure this out, but
yeah,
quote unquote real estate investing is so broad. Like, what in the world
yeah,
does that even mean?
yeah,
What direction do we take? How do you like determine what's going to be your right path? So it's like if we would have played with this, like if we could go back, we would have taken the fact that Seena had a W-2 income and I had a business, and we would have
yeah,
invested all of Seena's W-2 income into real estate investing and built another stream of income
yeah,
to give us optionality in the future rather than just jumping. Because that was definitely a really hard season in our
yeah.
marriage too, because I had been an entrepreneur for a long time. So I'm like, babe, just buy a house and go. And he was like,
He's like, hold
he was
on.
like, no, I need to have all the answers. I
Oh,
need to listen to all the podcasts. I need to read all the books. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, so I wanted to be like shaking him. But now it worked out big picture. But I think it's like getting to do that on the side is such a smarter idea.
yeah.
And the W-2 income makes it so much easier to get loans too.
Yeah.
Talk to me about analysis paralysis because I'm your king here. I spent 12 months learning and reading. I don't know what I was doing looking back now because we've learned more in the last 18 months of actively investing than any book, podcast,
Oh,
anything will ever teach you. But for me as an academic, or maybe someone listening is like more of a linear thinker, I'm like, well, if I learn everything, then I'll be super ready. And there's no way I'll
And
mess anything up.
I'm over here just like, just buy a house.
well, I feel that. That is hilarious. Yeah, you just got to go. Like,
Yeah.
School of Hard Knocks is the best. It
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah.
You don't want to go in blindly. Obviously, you guys have done enough real estate to know now. Like, you don't want to like be stupid when you're buying
Right.
stuff. But at some point, you got what you did. You guys did it. It was 12 months longer than Kacia wanted, but you got it. So that's huge.
Yeah.
At what point did the real estate bug bite you? Because you walked away from dentistry. I don't know if you were just like super excited, more excited about walking away from dentistry or more excited about going into real estate. But you obviously at some point got the bug. When was that?
Yeah, so we have this mentor and really good friend of ours, Steve Valentine, that Kacia was part of a mastermind group, and he was part of that. It wasn't a real estate group; it was just like a business mastermind. And he talked to us a little bit before that, so that really planted the seed. And we've like I started reading about it and learning about it more. I wouldn't say I really had the bug when I left. I think you might be right, as I was more excited to leave than
Yeah.
than get into real estate. So I started learning more about it after I left, which again, like Kisha said, would if I had to go back, we'd totally do it differently. But we're here now, and it worked. So really, the bug started hitting after that, and as soon as we started buying after the first one, it really was like, okay, this is not as scary. And I think this first
Bro,
one's always the
that's huge.
scariest,
I
right?
want to talk about that because that is a huge jump when you lock that first one. Because I can remember it like yesterday, and I think it's because I revisit it so often to teach other people. Like I can
Yeah.
remember those emotions. Like, is somebody going to rent it? Are they going to destroy it? Are they going to burn it down? Can
Yeah.
I make these payments? Like all these fears that are really emotion based. Because if you pull back and you look at it all logically, you're like, okay, let's take a break here. Like you're
Yeah.
buying a good area. You're probably going to get a good renter. There's a 96% occupancy rate in the U.S. Rents have gone up for the last 100 years.
Mhm.
Real estate tends to go up in value over time. Somebody's going to pay your debt off. If you had to make a payment for a month, it's like $500. Can you cover
Yeah.
$500? Like, just don't go out to eat as much. Like, it's so
Yeah.
when you actually do it, you're like, all right, let's go now. Is that how y'all felt?
Yeah. Well, I think for us, so Seena mentioned I was in this mastermind and there was 25 entrepreneurs. Everybody's in different spaces,
Mm,
but Steve Valentine was this guy who kind of had like a big brother feel to me right away.
Yeah.
And Seena had been listening to podcasts at that time back when he was a dentist about real estate. So I knew he was interested in it. And I said to him, I was like, my husband's like really interested in this. I could see us maybe going down that path one day. And Steve had $50 million worth of single family homes in the Phoenix area. And he was just like a super cool, down to earth guy. And I really connected
Yeah.
with him right away. So I was like, oh, this would be a cool introduction. And the reason why I bring that up is because sometimes if we don't tell people what we're interested
Mhm.
in, for example, someone listening into this show that is interested in real estate investing, but nobody around them knows, it's hard to know who could help support you, who has the way that like they can help guide you. Because Steve was at a place in his career where he was really excited to help anyone that was coming up next. He's about 10 years older than us. And so he was really excited that Seena was really interested in what he had done. And because he was a single family home guy, that was kind of the path that we were like, oh, that's what we should do because that's what Steve's done. And he's super successful in this space.
Yeah.
So then Seena got on the single family home thing. And to be honest with you, that was so boring to me that I was like, okay, like you don't get to do anything creative. I'm like a creative person. I like creating spaces for women to connect. So Seena's like, we're gonna buy millions of dollars worth of single family homes and we're gonna cash flow like $400 a month. And I was like, I'm so bored, but okay, go ahead. So
But the tax benefits, babe, like it's super
and I was
like
like, yay,
Hey,
let's
look, I am
do.
a single family guy through and through. So, Seena, hey, I'm squadding up with you right here. Like,
yeah.
Which it makes so much sense and it's so
Yeah.
smart. But what got me really excited is when we got into the Airbnb space because
Yeah.
I have a female community around my podcast. And like the idea of getting to create spaces for women to connect and having the creative element of it was really exciting to me because I felt like I could add value to this business versus with single family homes, it was like Seena could do it, but I didn't feel like I really had anything to contribute because I was like, we don't know our tenants and it
Yeah.
just didn't get me as excited. So I think that's also important for people listening in is like finding the lane that you're going to be excited about. But we have a single family home, we have a quadplex that we do midterm rentals. We have two now closing on our third Airbnb. So we've kind of tried out a bunch of different things in the last 18 months to figure out what we're most excited about, but also what makes sense for this season of life too. So yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I think when people think that they need to have like this perfect plan to start, and you kind of touch on this, is like just go. And that sounds so, it's kind of annoying when you're not doing it. You're like, what do you mean just start? Like, it's like really like if you just, I think people get caught up in like the spreadsheets and the calculators. And you're right. Like, yes, don't buy something dumb, but your first one's probably not going to be a home run. Like, why not just hit a single, get in the game, because that first property allowed us to feel the confidence to then go do the next one.
Yes.
And we got smarter, and we like each one we do, we get better at. But you can't just skip to the home run deals because you see some person on Instagram flexing that they bought whatever unit or whatever Airbnb rental income for that month. They're probably not even factoring in expenses, but whatever. Like you can't look at that and be like, well, I'm just going to wait for that deal. Or, oh, the rates are high. It's like, cool. We bought 3 houses in the last, I don't know, 8 months with the rates high. And it's an amazing time to buy. And we'll keep buying because we don't have any competition out there. So it's like,
good point.
All these factors, you think you need this perfect storm of everything to come together, but that's not what's going to happen. And I think that's really what the first one should be about, is just getting started. Don't get your teeth kicked in, do something manageable. Like it might not, even if you break even, you learned how to you get a loan. How do you get a tenant? How do you find a property manager? How do you handle a tenant issue like a plumbing, electric? Like you'll figure all that stuff out. And if you learn all that on your first one, you're now going to just be able to go catapult leaps and bounds going forward instead of just waiting around.
That's spot on. I like what you said. Like I'm a big baseball guy. Hit the singles, and then the doubles, triples, and home runs will come. Most people don't hit home runs on those first deal. Just get it under contract, get it closed, let it do okay. And then what you'll find is a single may actually turn into a triple or home run 4 or 5 years later. Because I feel like as a new investor, a lot of times we just look at year one pro formas. So we're saying, okay, how is this property actually going to produce just this year? And I get that. You definitely need to look at what is the here and now. But one thing, the longer you do this, and I have 5-6 years to be able to look back on, you say it just tends to get better over time. Like rents continue to go up, debt's getting paid down, the property's going up in value. And so you may have bought a home where you had $30,000 in equity and $150 a month in cash flow year one. Now you have $100,000 in equity and you have $350 a month in cash flow. But the key is you got to get in. Like if you wouldn't have got in, then you never would have reaped the benefits. I do not understand why like people will skip out on deals because they'll look and it's like, I only buy properties that cash flow $300 a month. And they'll look at a deal that cash flows 150 and they don't buy it. I'm like, I don't want to be mean, but are you something? Are you stupid? Like, what are you doing? That's a difference of $150 a month. And you're going to walk away from that when you could be getting hundreds of thousands in equity over time. Like it blows my mind. It's crazy. But anyways, I don't want to bash on people too much, but don't be that person, guys. Like logically, $150 a month. Like, what are we talking about? That's like one date night. Like, tell your wife, like, hey, I have to take one less date night this month, but we're gonna get a property. Do something. Like, figure it out.
Yeah.
But anyways, I don't know. What was the first property y'all got into? Did you start with the long-term rental or what?
Yeah, it's a long-term rental. It was in Phoenix. I think it was like 400 grand, I think. And we have a property manager, and our mentor brought it to us. Like he's part of that, that he sells as well, and he helps investors. So he's like, buy this house. And we're like, are you sure? He's like, just buy this house. And we're like, okay, we trust you. So like, we're really fortunate to have him in our corner and guide us through that first one for sure. And we actually, like you said, we actually caught a wave of appreciation in that area because we got in the game. So we were able to go in and refinance it like 5-6 months later because the value went up to like 525. So we took most of our money out of it.
We got so fortunate, to Seena's point of just like getting in the game, where we bought it at 4 or something,
410 or something, and then it appraised at 525. So we went and refinanced.
If you're on the sidelines, everyone's like, "Oh, you're lucky, you bought it at the right time." Okay, I got in the game, you didn't. It's like, bro, people told me it's a bad time to buy in 2018. Bad time to buy in 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23. And I'm just like, fine, I'm locking up deals, baby. And I'm getting lucky all the way along. It's crazy.
Well, and that's what because it was a big, from our career paths, it's like everything that I was doing in the online space, it's like, there's not as much skin in the game, right? So the risk doesn't feel like, it's like I launch a program. What happens? Like it cost me $200 a month in overhead to like have my, my thing that I'm like holding the course in. But Seena was like, we're putting this check down and we're putting a 20% deposit on that. Like this feels like a big thing. But once we saw that and we caught this wave at the beginning, it was like, we can pull all of our money out and now we can go use that to buy the next thing. It just that's when I think it really started to catapult. That was February 18th of 2022.
Yeah. And that was just pure luck of being in the game. And we're not we know that, but we're
Yeah.
also proud of ourselves for doing it because could have just sat on the sidelines and walked away from that deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
But
know
then we
what?
have that cash that we could then use for the next one.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you couldn't have got that cash back right away, which I do deals like that all the time. Obviously, I talk about it a lot where I'm burning properties, usually lower price properties than that, but recouping
Yeah.
capital. But even if somebody's like, well, what if you can't recoup that capital? Well, you can't right away. Let's say you couldn't right away. Let's say we didn't have that
Yeah.
appreciation. Well, what happens is 2, 3, 4 years down the road, you can. Like just
Yes.
what happened in that short span tends to happen over the long run,
Right.
one way or the
Yes.
other in real estate, you know? And
Yeah.
so you got to get in to give yourself the opportunity to capitalize on what I call the 6 pillars. You got leverage. Let's see if I can remember them all: appreciation, forced appreciation, cash flow, debt buy down, and tax benefits.
Yep.
Yep.
I tell people that's the greatest concoction known to man, but you don't get the benefit of it unless you take the jump. And you guys have done that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. It's pretty laid out. I mean, it's been proven for hundreds of years
I
that,
mean,
like, I mean, we've all been living in houses. Like, it's in one of my biggest concerns getting in early on, and a friend kind of helped me walk through it. Is like, man, I don't know anything about like fixing anything. He's like, nothing that happens to a house hasn't happened before that can't be fixed. It's like, so
Hmm.
that limiting belief can go out the window
yep.
because you just hire someone. Like, oh, I hate when people are like, oh, you want to change toilets and get calls about tenants and toilets in the middle of the night. It's like, we've never gotten a call about a toilet. Like, that makes no sense to me. And
Right.
plus, I would just call a plumber. Like, I'm not going over there changing a toilet. Like, it's just such
Yeah.
a,
That makes me so mad. Like when people talk like that, I'm just like, bro, you're making an excuse. I mean, what it is, I don't actually get mad because it's them not feeling confident or whatever is holding them back, and so they lash out at us. I'm like,
yeah,
dude, I'm like you. I'm like, I don't go over there and I'm serious. Like before I started doing content, I usually don't go to my properties. Now I go because I need YouTube videos and I
yeah,
need. But before then, bro, there are professionals who handle that. Just like you were a professional dentist. Like, oh, I don't want teeth because my tooth may break and I'm gonna have to fix it. No, you don't. You go to the dentist.
Yeah.
Like,
True. So
you're
true.
not fixing a toilet. You're not fixing a leaking roof. Call a guy. Like, what are we talking about?
yeah,
You're
exactly.
crazy. You are
Oh,
wild.
that's funny.
Anyways, when did y'all pivot into the short-term rental space? And then I want to talk about the midterm rental space after that. And what's
Yeah.
that been like?
So I was actually pretty anti short-term rental. I was like, I'm going to do this long-term thing, like Kacia said. We moved from Texas to Denver right after we got married in 2022, and we met a friend here that runs a brokerage that specializes in Airbnbs. She's like, hey, we're having this meetup. We're like, cool. We're new to town. We don't really have Airbnbs, but we'll come hang out and meet people. So we go and start talking to people. I'm like, whoa, 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 you're making like how much compared to like a long-term rental? And this is like outskirts of Denver, not even like downtown. I'm like, this is insane. So I got to like actually explore this. And I talked to probably 5, 10 people that night and like, wow, they're all like doing this. And I'm like, I think we went to dinner after that meetup and I was like, Kish, like you have this large women's community. What if we created like a space? We can drive your community to it.
Mm.
Um, these are what people are doing here. And like,
Yeah.
you get insane tax benefits on the short-term rental side. I was like, I think we could do that. And I was kind of bought in after that. I was like, let's give it a shot as our next one because we're looking to buy in Denver. So it was really that event that really kicked us off, which goes to show like get yourself around people and talking to people that are actually doing things to really feel out if that's what you want to do, not just go with what you think you know to be true, which turned out to not be true for me.
Buy your first or next real estate deal in the next 90 days guaranteed, or we'll continue coaching you until you do. That's my guarantee if you join my rental academy. I've stumbled upon a process that is so powerful that I can sit here today and say, you can come into my world and buy your first deal in the first 90 days. And if you don't, I'm going to keep coaching you until you do. What we've done in the rental academy is we've removed all the roadblocks for you. I've already chosen the market for you. You're going to have leads generated automatically. Myself and my team's going to work with you to analyze those leads. When you pull the trigger on a property that you want to buy and you need to fund it, we've got lenders in place. And after you've closed on it, if you need to rehab it, great. We've got contractors in place. And if you want to keep it as a rental, we've got property managers in place. So you come into our world, we plug you into a proven system, make it easy for you so you can have success in your real estate investing journey. If you're interested, you can go to cowboysacademy.com, or if you go down to the show notes of this episode, click the link that says Cowboys Rental Academy, and it will take you to your next steps there. If you've been struggling finding good real estate deals, I've got a solution for you. It's REI Call Center. REI Call Center has professionally trained and managed cold callers to help you scale your real estate business. I think they give you somewhere around like 1,500 cold calls per day. Their clients have closed around $10 million from the leads they brought in. They got close to 200 clients going right now, and they're really more than just cold callers. Yes, they have their team of professionals who are making their calls, but they have weekly trainings and Q&A calls for yourself. They have training videos. They've got Slack channels with dedicated people to make sure you're successful. They've got checklists, cheat sheets, you name it. They've got you covered to make sure you are successful in your real estate journey. Well, how does it all work? Well, step one, you're going to pull a targeted list working with them from PropStream so that you can target the certain locations that you want to start buying properties in. Second, they're going to use their Zen call platform to start calling 1,500 calls a day per cold caller. They're going to then upload all the leads into Asana. You have a view of them, and you can go attack and start buying the properties that you see that pique your interest without having to do any other work. Look, I have worked a W-2 job while building my real estate portfolio. I've been raising a family the entire time, so I haven't had time to go and cold call myself. And that's where a company like REI Call Center comes into effect to be able to take that load off your plate so that you can generate leads, close more deals, and build that portfolio. You can reach out to them at reicallcenter.com, or if you go to the show notes of this episode, you will see a link that will take you directly to it.
And we started doing some research about what existed in Denver in the short-term rental space. And I've been a bridesmaid 15 times. So I was like, I've gone on so many bachelorette parties. And while Denver isn't like, a Nashville or an Austin for bachelorette parties from a destination perspective, we were looking on Airbnb and there was no bachelorette party themed houses. We're like, this is a really interesting angle. If we niche to girls trips, retreats, bachelorettes, like there's no competition. And we're really big for Airbnb on buying in legislated areas. Yeah. So once we learned more about legislation in Denver, we're like, there are certain pockets where there's a limited amount of licenses. If we jump on this particular area and we know the type of house that we want, who we want to cater it towards, like we felt like we had a really good idea there. So we bought our first Airbnb. And we were like, oh, we can niche this, and it really took off.
And we had fun with it. We were like, oh man, this is really cool. Like we get to like set up and design and create this like cool space that allows like we kind of have that interaction with the guests. We like that part. It's definitely a hospitality business. So I wouldn't like if you got a W-2 or you have other stuff going on and you don't want any like, don't just get into Airbnb because you think you can make a lot of money, because you really got to like that aspect of it, because guests do care, and that's how you will succeed going forward in the Airbnb space. But we saw ourselves like, oh, it's just fun, like doing this together. Like you can like do the marketing side, and then I help with like the operations side. And it was really that one, it hit, and like, ooh, this is fun. Let's keep doing this.
Really cool.
Yeah. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I want those links. Will you send me the links? Will you email them to me? We'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Really cool, so people can check it out. Also, team, if you can hear me right now, put these in the show notes. So that would be awesome for people to check it out. Go ahead, Kacia. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, no. What was interesting is at the same time that we were like interested in Airbnb, Seena was also binging content about seller financing and figuring out creative financing, like ways that we could continue to grow this portfolio now that we got this bug. So simultaneously, we're going to this meetup about Airbnbs and we're like, ooh, we could do this together. But he also is cold calling like sellers to just kind of start to figure out how we can talk to people about if they'd be interested in selling their houses. Because again, he was getting into quote unquote real estate investing, and I had my business, but we didn't really know what a quote unquote real estate investor does. So he's like, I just have to build my own schedule because he didn't have a W-2 job. So he was starting to call. I
was like, I guess I'll just call people and ask them about
sell their house.
And this is part of the stuff that like, it's really, it's just like, it's so new. So I was like, I call someone and I'm like, so like, I don't know what to ask them. What do I ask them about a house? Like, is it still standing? Like, does it have good bones? I don't know. Like I call and they're like, yeah, what do you want to know? And I'm like, I mean, how's the roof? Like, it's just like these early on things that like, it's nerve wracking because I'm so used to knowing, and part of like leaving dentistry was starting over, right? Because I got to like a top, I had a title that was a doctor, and I had a experience, and I like kind of knew what I was doing. So part of, I think, what keeps people stuck is the fact that they have to start over, because those early on times, I totally forgot I used to do that.
Yeah.
I would call like, oh, I'm going to call 10 people today and see if they'll sell me their house. And I sound like an idiot because I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, and he wanted to. So we were doing a conventional loan for this. We ended up finding our first Airbnb in Denver in this legislated area. So as we were closing, we were waiting 30 days, and we were like, "Well, what if we could find something else in addition at the exact same time?" But we can't get another loan, so we'd have to do it from like creative financing terms. So Seena was cold calling to see if he could get someone to sell their house to him on creative financing terms, which is how we found our quadplex at the exact same time. We were under contract with a seller financing deal on our quadplex that we do midterm rentals in, and our Airbnb at the exact same time because of Seena cold calling.
Because you were cold calling, you get it from a cold call?
Yeah. It was an expired, I think it was an expired listing. Like they took it off the market. They couldn't sell it. And side note, like our last 2 deals we've closed were, we found them for rent on Zillow. We call them and be like, hey, any interest in selling? So that's a good strategy if you're out there and maybe there's nothing for sale in your area. Go to the for rent, look at the price history. If I saw it was for sale or I saw they price drop a bunch, there's probably a good chance they're going to want to sell and get out of it. So
for sure, dude. I don't do a ton of cold calling. When I do, it's very like strategic. Like I bought a property in a certain area. I like the area, and so then I call around.
Yeah.
But some of the best deals I've ever done, like everybody has their own way of cold calling.
Yeah.
My favorite way is pull a list of out-of-state LLC owners. So out-of-state investors. Start with vacant and then go to out-of-state and call those folks. I absolutely love working with investors because they understand the game. It's like you can present to them your pro forma and you can just be like, hey, like I have to get it at this price for it to make sense. And then they can make a logical decision. Like, yeah, you know what? I'll part with it or I won't. And it's a very, very easy conversation. They'll have the conversation with you. Everybody knows what they're doing. And so anyways, just a little tip there for everybody. It's pretty easy to work with investors. One thing I want you to expound on is why, I think I know why, but I won't steal your thunder. Why choose areas that like there's already legislation in place for short-term renters for the listeners out there?
Yeah. You want to take it?
So, I mean, just you're putting so much money into a property. Like when we're doing Airbnbs, we're doing luxury Airbnbs. So they sleep 12 in beds. We put a lot into the design and the furniture and all of that. So honestly, just from protecting your investment, and we treat each Airbnb like it's its own separate business. So for us, it was just really important that there was legislation because we also knew that created this sense of like, there's less competition, right? Like now there's no more licenses in the area that we bought our first Airbnb. And actually the area that we bought our second Airbnb, there's no more licenses. So we literally have no competition for that type of demographic that we're serving. A lot of times people, especially in Denver, and every single city is different in terms of legislation, but for Denver, there are certain pockets that are legislated and certain that aren't. And we've just seen the ramifications of when they try and put in legislation after the fact. So that's the game that we just had to get really like comfortable with, like just kind of setting what we thought was right, you know?
Yeah. You guys said that you're doing the like high end, the luxury Airbnb. One question that I have pondered: do you think that Airbnb is losing its middle class? Like, do you feel it's getting to a point to where you either really got to stand out or really win on price? And if you're somewhere stuck in the middle, you're probably going to hurt on revenue. Or am I just making that up? I could just be making that up.
110%. And the data shows it that, you know, the 6-person moderately priced house, good luck. Like will not rent. I promise you. Like, and I'll show you. So the 12-person house we have, our first one, I created another listing within the house because I can close the bottom of the house and create a 6-person house. So I put both up on Airbnb as a 12-person or as a 6-person. We've maybe got 1 or 2 6-person bookings, and we have everything else is 12-person. Like, and then I track it on this site called Rank Breeze, which shows me how I show up in the Airbnb search. We're page 1 all day on 12-person. We're like page like 6 on the 6-person because, and it's not because it's the same quality house. It's just there's so many of them, which then becomes a race to the bottom, right? And I'm like, I don't want to play that game. I don't enjoy that game. We did that once last year when we first launched. We just dropped our prices a ton, and it was just a nightmare. It was damage. Everything's getting ruined. I'm like, I don't want to play that game.
Yeah.
So you're totally right. Like that middle, like I would either go, for example, the one we're closing on now in 2 weeks is a little A-frame in the mountains, sleeps 4 people, but it's an experience. It's like a unique thing that people will go do because it'll be like getting out to the mountains. So that's where we didn't go with the 12. Like we were like, we'll only do big houses from here on out, but this one will be able to have its unique advantage because it's an experience, like you said. And it's the 2 to 4 people you can still play in that game, but that 6 to 8 is just like there's no
Yeah.
way. I mean,
It's
there's
like the days of your grandma's couch are just like
yeah,
gone. Like you can't,
you can't do it.
you can't. And I think we knew that. So that's where the risk, like I don't think naturally humans were wired to like jump and like move into the unknown, right? We're wired for this familiar comfort zone. But in this case, once we had proof of concept with the first one, which is called Peach House, we were like, okay, there's actually a need that this is getting booked enough. Like, let's find another one and let's do the same type of model for that exact demographic.
Yeah.
But after we did 2, we're like, we don't know if the market supports us doing a third one like that. So Seena's like, let's go to the mountains in a regulated area and let's try a different demographic that can, to his point, be more experiential. Like we're going to do like a cool dome and like a stargazing net and make it super vibey in this cute little A-frame because we're like, the market doesn't support, like we're doing enough research to make sure that like this is going to be a slam dunk and that there's a demand for it. Because the last thing you want to do is spend a ton of money on furnishing and getting a really, these are high price point properties that like we do not want to be backwards in our mortgage, but we also want to be diversified. So it's like we have long-term, we have midterm, and we have Airbnb versus we're personally not huge fans of just doing one thing, but having lots of different streams,
Yeah, and you'll have the passion for Airbnb. I've noticed in my own property, I used to have 2 across the street from each other. I sold one of them, but it's like this little octagon-shaped house on this gated island in Charleston. And so I was the only one doing it really back in 2018 or 2019 whenever I bought it.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have to put much effort into the design. Now, it wasn't like trash. Don't get me wrong. Like it's a nice place. But now, and it's smaller. So it's like still niche and I'm still the tree house. Like we're doing A-okay.
Yeah.
But I've noticed I'm going to have to sink money into it. Like I'm going to have to update the bathrooms where I did before. I'm going to have to add some neat little, things that help the treehouse experience. Cause I'm like you guys, I have that experience. Like a treehouse, half a mile from the ocean, gated island.
So cool.
In Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah.
But now how do I stand out even more? So I would encourage anybody who's interested in the Airbnb space, because there's been a lot of people who have just got into Airbnb just as people who were buying houses and put it on Airbnb. If you're going to go and invest in that space, make sure you learn and do it the correct way so you don't burn yourself. Like there's a lot of data now. We didn't have that when I first started.
Yeah.
A lot of data to be able to tell you what areas are performing well, what types of properties in those areas, and you can go look at those properties and see how they're decorated. Obviously, you don't want to copy it, but you get your own ideas, and you got to be able to stand out. It's like anything in life. The cream rises to the top, and I don't think that's ever truer in the Airbnb space. What's your management been like? I do a lot of long-term rental. I do fix and flip. I've had multiple short-term rentals. I enjoy them. They are definitely, from my experience, a little more, I don't know if volatile is the right word.
Yeah.
But there's more up and down because every future booking is relying on previous bookings, and you got to have that communication, and there's a lot that goes into it. So what's that been like for you guys? How have you optimized that as you continue to grow your portfolio?
Yeah, that's I would definitely say like early on, it's definitely more work. And I was definitely one that would always go over to the house and try to like tinker with it and be the person that does everything until we really started like implementing like processes and management. And we self-manage the Airbnbs because we've got it down to like probably 1 to 2 hours a week, maybe of that. That starts with your cleaning team, like having a really solid team, boots on the ground that can really let you know what's going on with the house, tell you what you need to order, things like that. But there's a lot of stuff out there that can help you automate. We use a property management system that sends out check-in messages, check day after messages, checks in with the guests, sends them all the info. We use a digital guidebook. Anytime I get a question, I update the guidebook to add that in. And that's been super helpful on cutting down the amount of back and forth with the guests. Like what's the Wi-Fi or where's the trash, like these things that come up, I just add it into the guidebook and I just say in the message, hey, almost everything will be in the guidebook. Let me know if you don't find it
Oh,
in there. Send me a message. And we rarely get in like during the stay messages. It's mostly before. Um, Even now, we send like recommendations on where to go, and the fact that we niche to one type of group, it's been even better because we know exactly what they want to ask. Like they want to know where to go to brunch. They want to know where to like get cocktails. Like we put it all in the guidebook. Like they want to know where to go on a hike. It just makes it super easy because we know what they want to do, and then the house is equipped with everything they want for their experience. So management wise, like plan on it being a little more front loaded for sure. And yeah, it's more work in a long term, but I don't think it's not as much work as like the potential return on income that you can get on it.
And
Sure.
proximity to like, so all of our properties, well, outside of this this one in the mountains that's an hour from us, they're 10 minutes from each other, so they're all really close to us, which has made the management getting into Airbnb a little bit easier because Seena can pop over there if he's needed to, versus our Phoenix long-term rental. We've had a property management like team since day one. We don't even know our tenants in that. So we're completely don't even touch that at all. We've never gotten a phone call about it, versus Seena's managing all of the Airbnbs and our quadplex local. But I think as we evolve, the idea would be eventually to hire someone to bring them in-house to support all of our projects and kind of be like a house manager type thing for everyone, because of the fact that if you hire a property manager, which is a good idea for some people, but often they're taking 25% of revenue, not profit. So it's like that's such a huge amount of your income that you can get it to the point, even if you're working a W-2 job, like you could get this to the point that you can manage it yourself 1 to 2 hours a week, and it's not as much work, but you're going to have to know that on the front end, it's going to take a lot more time. Like it took Seena a long time to get the processes in place. And then I don't do anything. I was like, no one gets my phone number. I just show up and I get pumped, but I don't do any guest communications. But there's a lot of good tools too.
And that goes back to like do it right. Like if you set up the house right, like you do good furniture, you like think about things, that's gonna cut down on the back end. Like if you go with that cheap like bed, it's just gonna break and then you're dealing with a broken bed. You know what I mean? It's one of those things you have to just do it right. And for us, like we really thought about that as okay, let's just buy quality things. Let's just not have to deal with that stuff on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
Have y'all had any horror stories yet? I'll tell you my worst. And then if y'all don't have one, great. You'll have one eventually. So
yeah.
I was literally in the old house we had. I had been watching Netflix. It's 11:30 Eastern. And I'm just out on my recliner snoring. And I get this call from the guest who's coming in. I was still managing at the time. It was a very big growth stage of life, and I just dropped the ball. So I didn't put him on the guest list to be able to get through the gate. So he's been driving from Pennsylvania all day, him and his family. He can't get in the gate, and he's just calling me, just cussing me out. I'm talking about just mad. It's like 11:30 p.m. I'm like, oh, my bad, man. I'm sorry. I'll add you on there right now. That's my fault. So then they drive down the island. I get a call again 10 minutes later. He walks, couldn't get into the house. Couldn't figure out how to do the schlage, whatever it's called, door unlock. Finally get him to do that. He hangs up. They start carrying stuff in. He calls me back. Cleaning team forgot to clean.
Oh no.
all the towels are piled up in the bathroom. All the linens.
Oh,
this dude.
No.
Oh man.
It was so bad. He explodes on me. I'm like, look, I don't know what to tell you. I'm like, it's midnight, dude. I feel terrible. I'm gonna comp your entire stay. Just don't even leave me a review. I'll comp your entire stay if you just promise not to leave me a review. Go to a hotel tonight. I'll pay for the hotel. Cleaning team will be there first thing in the morning, and we got it fixed. But that was the point for me, and it was my fault because I didn't have like good systems in place. I was like, yeah, I'm done managing. That was icing on the cake for me. So I don't know if y'all have any horror stories. I hope that doesn't happen to y'all.
I think the best one, honestly, is when we got our quadplex. We bought it with long-term tenants in it. And so keep in mind, our first property was in Phoenix, and we have a property management company. So we've never done any sort of like landlording. And while we were under contract for our first Airbnb to close, because the quadplex was a creative financing deal, it closed more quickly. So that was our first property that we bought in Denver. It had long-term tenants in it. It was a really good deal. And we had, 4% interest, 10% down. It was amazing. Really amazing like deal. So we knew going into it that one of the tenants was in jail. And Seena was like, it's okay. We're just still going to close because we didn't want him to change his mind because all of these commercial guys were coming in like offering. And we were like, we just want to get this closed. So whatever, the tenant's in jail, we'll figure it out. So we're both naive, but I'm also naive and very, very optimistic to a fault. And most times it works out, but sometimes it's a little bad. And I was like, babe, this is what we should do. Let's make all of our tenants baskets and we'll put little chocolates and little Starbucks gift cards and we'll go to our Quadplex and we'll like make them love
Landlords
us so
of the year.
Landlords of the year.
No.
So we pull up and we've got these baskets for our tenants and we see that the tenant who was in jail, his brother apparently got drunk and crashed his truck into our garage. And that was the first time, literally our first time going to this property.
Oh my God. We're pulling up like that truck is really close to the garage. Like, and then as I was like, no way. It's our first day as landlords.
And so that happened. I was like, let's still bring the baskets to all the tenants anyway. So then we go up to the first tenant and the first tenant is starting to negotiate with us of when he wants to pay his rent.
Yeah,
and we hadn't talked about this yet. We didn't know how to handle it. The second tenant, we go up to the door and this building had no pets with the previous owner of the building. And as we open the door, this husky puppy comes out and I didn't know what to do. So
out comes running a little puppy.
So I start petting the puppy and I'm looking at Seena. I was like, I don't know what we're supposed to say here.
Is it pet for like is not pet friendly?
No, so her lease was with the previous owner and she kept trying to get a pet and he kept saying no. So we knew that she knows she shouldn't have it. We all knew.
And then we get in the car and the tenant is calling Seena from jail.
Oh yeah. It's
trying to explain that he had this like baby mama drama while he was in jail and he wanted to still stay in this place. And I was like, what in the world?
He literally goes, hey, it's like one of those love triangles, man. You know, I'm like, I don't know. Like, he's like, my baby mama found panties of another girl. I mean, guy, I don't need to know any of this.
Stop here. We don't need any more information. Can we just have your keys and you're out?
Yeah. I was like, my lawyer's going to come to the jail and you're going to have to sign this document and we're getting you out.
But but I think it's important to hear those stories too, because like, yeah, that can scare some people, but like, you cannot learn that in a podcast. Yeah. Like you can't learn that unless you're talking to people that are in the space. When you hear other people's horror stories and then you figure that out, it's like, now
we figured it out. Like
you build your confidence that way.
There's an answer to everything. You may have to go search for that answer.
Yeah.
So you can mitigate that risk.
And I was crying. I was laughing so hard because I'm like, you can't even make this up. This is wild.
Yeah, that was
wild. Just trying to take them a fruit basket and they're like, nah, fam.
Yeah.
He's like, screw your chocolates.
They didn't care about the chocolate. They're just going to be late on rent. Like, that's wonderful.
Yeah, y'all learned a valuable lesson that day.
Yeah.
So fun.
Yeah. That was fire.
That is amazing. Real quick, and then we'll close this thing down. But I know there's people wondering about this, and I did do a good job of going in when you guys talked about it. The creative finance deal.
Yeah.
Run down really quickly what that looked like for you all, how you structured it. A lot of people can't wrap their mind around how to do creative finance deals or seller finance, whatever you call it.
So creative finance is like the overarching term. Then there's seller finance, wraparound mortgages, sub two. You might hear those terms. This one was a seller finance, meaning it's a paid off property. So the seller's fully financing the property. When you think of it, think of like there's 4 levers of this deal. So there's purchase price. You can negotiate the rate. You can negotiate your down payment, and then how long this contract's going to go for. What I like about creative finance and seller finance in general is everyone can win here. Seller can win. I can win. A traditional financing offer where you go to the bank, you're kind of at mercy of their rates. Sellers just trying to get as much money as they can. They don't really care about like your rate. That's not their issue. And you can't really negotiate that with the bank. So seller finance allows both parties to really win. One thing when I was calling and I learned shortly after like doing my first few was, really listen to what the seller wants. They're going to give you a clue. They're going to say either they want a lot of money down right now, or they need just like, hey, I need $5,000 a month because I'm putting my mom in a retirement home. Cool. So I know the monthly payment needs to be $5,000. How do we adjust the other levers to make it work for me? So if I got to pay $5,000, well, I need the purchase price to come down a little bit because that's a lot of monthly for me that I wasn't intending, or vice versa, whatever it may be. So this one was, I saw he price drop a bunch. I think he had it at like 1.3, but he dropped it all the way down to like 1. And that's pretty significant price drop within 2 weeks, right? Like I was like, oh, this guy wants to get rid of this thing. So reach out to him. He's open to it. Come to find out, like he's just done being a landlord. He doesn't really need all the money right now, so he's open to seller finance. So we're like, cool. Can we do 10% down so we can conserve our cash? And he's like, that's great. I just want to make sure I'm getting this monthly payment every month. I'm like, great. And he actually offered, I think he said 5% interest. I was like, can we bring that down a little bit? That helps us bring the payment down. And I let him be open to how long. He's like, I'll carry this thing for 30 years. He's like, I don't need you to pay it off. I don't need all the money. I prefer, yeah. He's like, I'd prefer you just keep paying me for 30 years because I'm going to make all that interest. I'm like, great. Now I don't have a 5-year timeline on getting this done. So we kind of went back and forth and adjusted the levers until it worked for both of us. But it was nice in his sense because I knew he didn't care about needing all the money right now. He's like, where am I going to put it? The stock market was tanking. And he's like, I'd rather take your 4.5% interest on that. And I'm a pilot. I don't need to worry about this stuff. So yeah, that's kind of how it worked out on that one.
Yeah. It's negotiating on terms,
Yeah.
You figure out, okay, what do you need? All right, here's what I need. How do we manipulate this to make it advantageous for both of us? Sometimes you can't. You walk away, but oftentimes you can because you can literally do anything with seller finance. You can structure it however you want.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of making it work for both of you guys. Well, this has been amazing. Guys, Seena hosts a podcast. Do you host too, Kacia, the Get Investing podcast? Is it both you guys?
We were doing it together and then he is doing it solo. So we're in this iteration phase of the podcast, but I do my own over here. So we're kind of finding the way to like do it together, but then also have separate podcasts.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I would tell all real estate investors, go check out the Get Investing podcast. And then all ladies, I don't want to exclude men. Men, you're welcome to go listen to. I personally have listened to episodes of the Empower Her podcast. Fantastic. Kacia's built an amazing community, around that brand. So a lot of good information on both of those podcasts. And then where else can people find you guys?
You can find us on Instagram at Kacia Ghetmiri or at Seena Ghetmiri.
Yep.
And then, we'll give you links to Peach House and Champagne House and our little A-frame coming soon.
Yeah.
But Seena loves answering like random questions and DMs about stuff like this. If you come at me with percentages, I'm not your girl for that, but slide into his DMs and he'll answer.
Yeah. That is awesome. Well, guys, if you're listening to this, take a screenshot, tag us on Instagram. I will have everybody's Instagram in the show notes. Their Airbnbs in the show notes. We'd all like to tell you thank you for listening to this episode. Seena, Kacia, you guys are amazing. Power couple, crushing it. Love talking to y'all. Y'all are so helpful. Thank you for being on the show and keep crushing in the real estate world.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.